mentioned to you yesterday, I really appreciate putting on this hearing. I think it's really, really important. I think if the American people read everything that was provided for this hearing, their minds would be blown. I think some of the stuff that's in here is sensitive information. We should maybe think about maybe daylighting that, because I've never read something more outrageous than reading that memo. So it's pretty crazy. So you mentioned just now to my colleague from Michigan that the oversight is essential. How did oversight work out in the last 4 years of the Biden administration?
It didn't really work out.
Okay, gotcha. So it's not a question. So it's not a question of oversight. It's a question of intent. Because here's the reality. I think Americans would be appalled to know that their government was spying on them, not just spying on them, paying people like Mr. Crowder, who you didn't take the job to go walk around airports monitoring bathroom habits and coffee habits of American citizens, and yet your government was paying you to do that, to spy on American citizens, violating the Fourth Amendment, shredding the Fourth Amendment. You know, one of the things that I had to do to become a U.S. citizen was learn a lot about American history. I had to read the Constitution. My mom convinced me that the citizenship test was going to be impossible, so I memorized it. And everybody talks about what Joe Biden says is the thing. You know the thing, life, liberty, is he couldn't even repeat it, so he called it the thing. But after the end of that sentence, there's a line that says, the government is deriving its just powers from the consent of the governed. Deriving their just powers from the consent of the government. Mr. Taibbi, do you think that over the last 4 years of the Biden administration that they derived their just powers from the consent of the governed? Do you think Americans knew that they had somebody stalking them at airports and bathrooms and coffee shops and watching who they were talking to on airplanes?
Senator Moreno, thank you for the question. No, I don't think so. In fact, as a reporter in the last 4 years, it's been very frustrating investigating not just programs like Quiet Skies, but also issues like censorship. It seems like there are only 3 ways that you can get important information. One is through whistleblowers, like the ones represented by Mr. Levitt. Another is through investigations like the ones by this committee. And the third is if an eccentric billionaire decides to hand over a ton of material to a reporter. It's become almost impossible to get information about these abuses. And I think what I was trying to get at with my opening statement is that particularly in the last 4 years, the government has taken the position that the citizenry, they're all basically suspect until proven innocent, and it should be the other way around.
Well, that should be the other way around. That's the foundational principles of this country. That isn't up for debate. There is no law that we need to pass. That's in our Constitution, in our Bill of Rights. And Mr. Crowder, I'm going to shift to you for a second. I was out of the meeting. I had to go to a banking session, so I apologize. Could you point out your wife real quick for me? Raise your hand. Has anybody from the U.S. government apologized to your wife? So they haven't even bothered. Nobody in the government has bothered to pick up the phone, send a letter saying, we are very sorry.
Nobody.
Well, let me say that to you on behalf of the United States government. Apologize for what happened to you. It should never happen to any American citizen. It's a total and complete disgrace that the previous administration weaponized this. You mentioned, Mr. Crowder, this is a result of 9/11. How many American citizens were involved in applauding at 9/11?
0 to my knowledge.
So what problem are we trying to solve? Meaning, if the auspices of this were, look what happened, we can never let another 9/11 happen, why the hell are we having Americans surveyed at airports and on airplanes? And Mr. Taibbi, you mentioned something else. During the COVID era, let's not forget how insane that was. Do you remember what that was like? Like you get on an airplane, you had the mask on. We saw people dragged off airplanes because they weren't wearing a mask, dragged, like humiliated by the police, dragged off for the offense of not having a mask on. But when they served you, you could take your mask off to eat because it was the most polite virus ever in the history of humanity. They said, well, you're eating, so I'm not going to infect anybody right now. But when you're done, I'm going to go back to the infectious part. Those of us who had some level of like, hey, this is just stupid, said, we're not going to wear a mask, and that put you on a no-fly list. That got you banned from flying. Could you explain that?
Actually, Senator, it's worse than that. My understanding is that just for supporting a group that protested the wearing of masks on airplanes, you could be placed on a no-fly list or on a watch list by the TSA. That's in addition to the J6 category, which included people who were just suspected of traveling to the national capital region, not even of going into the capital.
You know, I don't mind over time. Let me just make this comment. Mr. Chairman, you mentioned this to our ranking member who's not here to listen to this, but maybe he wouldn't want to. He has a choice, right, to extend CISA 2015 by voting yes for this continuing resolution today. But it's so important to him to hijack Republicans that even he's willing to say, well, this is not that actually important to me. I also find it decently ironic that when they had control of the House, the Senate, and the White House, that the report that he issued, he could have put that on the floor, right? I'm not wrong there, right? He could have put that on the floor and passed that.
Well, it's a good point because this is in response to my wanting to put First Amendment protections on the CISA extension. CISA was the agency. This isn't the authorization for the whole agency, but for some of their powers. And I've said, yes, we can let it go through, but let's add First Amendment protections to it. Why? Because the First Amendment protections were another department of government, some through CISA, DHS, some through the FBI, that Mr. Taibbi knows a lot about because they were meeting with Twitter. And a lot of Americans still don't even know this, that the FBI was actually sitting in meetings with Twitter officials, that CISA was sitting in meetings. And so what I've said, if we're going to reauthorize CISA, which a lot of people want to reauthorize this particular authority, let's reauthorize it with an amendment that simply says government officials are not allowed to meet with them to take down constitutionally protected speech. If it's illegal, they can meet with them and warn them something illegal is happening on their social media. But things that are not illegal, that are protected by speech, why not put it on a must-pass piece of legislation? That's the only way we're ever going to get it beyond the other side is to do it. So you're right, it's fake outrage. They're outraged about this particular authority expiring, but they have every chance. They'll have another chance today to vote to reauthorize it, and it'll be part of the continuing resolution to reauthorize this particular facility.
But just super quickly, I apologize. Last year, when you weren't chairman, the ranking member could have put that bill on the floor and chose not to. Is that correct?
Yes. Senator Langford.
For the witnesses, thanks.